Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Formula E Show, the weekly podcast all about the world of Formula E. This week will be the first of, hopefully, well, not even hopefully, will be the first weekly show of the Formula E Show. Every Tuesday will be the Formula E Show, roughly an hour-long podcast talking all about the news in the world of Formula E. Last time out, I got a great little bit of advice and a little change I should make, thanks to the F1 nerd commented in the comments section, obviously. He said it'd be great to have timestamps. So what I've done is, as you can see on screen right now, is create this little sort of contents page talking all about what's going to be in this video. In the description will be the same contents page with timestamps, so you can go there straight away, save the hassle. If you don't fancy listening to certain things, or if you're just really eager to listen to a particular story, you can do that. So on screen you can see today we're going to be talking about the Zurich E-Prix. I know that was a little while ago, but I've not had a chance to talk about that just yet, so I want to just quickly get that out of the way because that was a fantastic race, and so like I say, I want to talk about that one. But after that, we've got a lot of Season 5 news, including some big changes at Venturi, some car livery launches, which they're always fun, driver changes, and the Season 5 calendar announcement. Lots to talk about with you guys today. Hopefully you all look forward to it, so let's just jump into it. Let's get started with the first story. The Zurich E-Prix. Was there anywhere else we were going to start this podcast? The first ever street race in Switzerland, and what a cracker it was. Let's be perfectly honest with you. Jean-Eric Vergne could have almost wrapped up the title this weekend. Obviously we've got 2 more races to go, but that's going to be in one weekend, so this is the second to last Formula E weekend. We went to this race, Jean-Eric Vergne, a commanding lead. He's been there pretty much all season, right at the top of those standings, and this weekend he could have really cemented that championship win, his first ever championship in Formula E. However, it was just not his weekend. It all started in qualifying, a poor run in the first lot of qualifying runners, ended up starting the race in P17 at 20 races. Jean-Eric Vergne, the man who's been Mr. Consistent all season long, would start the race down in P17. One of my favourite drivers, Mitch Evans, would start the race on pole, his first ever pole position, Jaguar's first ever pole position in Formula E, a really good job for him. Vergne's teammate, Andre Lotterer, would start P2, so the pace was there in the Techeetah, but for whatever reason, Vergne could not quite extract it on the day. Sam Bird would start P3, so that's exactly what he needed to try and keep his championship hopes alive. Jerome D'Ambrosio in the Dragon car, someone who's been sort of mentioned that's going to be leaving the team at the end of the season. Nothing official, but it's been floating around in the world of Formula E, and the rumour mill, as it always is, turning. That is one of them at the moment. And Lucas di Grassi would start P5. Pretty much early on, not too much to comment on. There was damage between Daniel Abt and Nelson Piquet, but apart from that, nothing too crazy. We did see Lucas di Grassi start this monster charge by lap 16, starting in P5, ended up in P2, passing all the top boys that he could possibly pass. Jean-Eric Vergne then was the next sort of a big talking point. The lap after Lucas di Grassi managed to get into P2, lap 17, Vergne had big contacts, well, almost big contact with Felix Rosenqvist. Down at turn 1, Rosenqvist went straight on into the wall, losing his front wing. It was pretty mad, to be fair. These guys were scrapping over, I think it was P12, 12th position. These two guys should be fighting for the World Championship. I know Vergne is, but Mahindra have really fallen off this second half of the season. So, for me, that makes me think they're putting all their eggs in one basket, and that is Season 5. So, hopefully for Rosenqvist and Heifeld, that is what they have done, but Mahindra have really fallen off, and this race really did prove that. Absolutely nowhere all weekend, but like I said, Rosenqvist in the role of front wing on the track. The next lap, Lucas di Grassi took the lead, and Vergne then ran over that front wing. All carnage as we then went towards a full course yellow. That's when everyone made their pit stops. So usually when we see a bit of drama in the pit stops, it was pretty much nullified because of the full course yellow. However, the big talking point through the pit stops was Lucas di Grassi once again retaining the lead, but also Jean-Eric Vergne's car not starting. Now, you shouldn't have a bias in these sort of things, but I'm not going to lie. I love John Verne. I love him, but I love Sam Bird as well, and it's so difficult, and I wanted so badly for this title fight just to get down to the final race, and so I sort of wanted Verne to have a bad weekend, so it really spiced up the championship when Verne's second car did not work, didn't start, cost him so much time, but he was still just about in the points. I think he was about P8, still hanging on in there, and it was looking good. He had the fastest lap, but then one of the most dramatic moments in Formula E history, one of the most controversial moments in Formula E history, Mitch Evans, Andre Lotterer, Jose Maria Lopez, Jean-Eric Verne and Sebastian Buemi, all of them were given drive-through penalties, which in Formula 1 happens occasionally, but in Formula E, this is rare. This never ever happens. Within the 4 seasons we've been racing, this has happened a handful of times, so to give it to 5 drivers is ridiculous, all for the same reason, speeding under full course yellows. All of them had to come in, all of them lost a handful of places, ended up, well, Degrassi was already leading, he was off. Bird, who was running down in 4th and 5th, was then promoted all the way up to 2nd. Jerome D'Ambrosio, who's running in the lower parts of the points, all the way up to 3rd. Jean-Eric Verne all the way down to 11th. Jose Maria Lopez on the final few laps ran into the wall. Verne was able to get back up into P10. Someone else as well who was in that top 10 was Nico Prost. I'll quickly mention that in a second. But Verne was on for 1 point plus the 2 points for fastest lap. But then, with 2 laps to go, Andre Lotterer, his teammate, puts in the fastest lap. What was that all about? Andre Lotterer, what a muppet. Absolute muppet. You know, at the end of the day, the team already had the points. I know Lotterer himself, you know, he might not have realised he was going so quick, or maybe he just wants the points for himself, but absolutely mugged his teammate who's in the championship fight. And at the end of the day, we saw in season 1 how close, or in all the seasons, how close it ends up being in the last race. 2 points could be a lot of difference. So if the season is defined by 1 or 2 points, which it easily could be, Andre Lotterer could be the man to blame for stealing a fastest lap. Absolutely mental. But as you can guess, Lucas Di Grassi came on along the line to win the Zurich E-Prix, the first ever street race in Switzerland. Sam Bird getting back up into that title fight now. Really great effort from Bird getting P2. I know a lot of it was luck, but he was in the right place at the right time. So good effort from Bird. And Jerome D'Ambrosio, woo, an ex-Lotus F1 driver. If you're here for the Formula E, you won't know, but Formula 1, my favourite team, always was Lotus F1. They're not in anymore, but Jerome D'Ambrosio did a one-off race for Lotus at Monza 2012. So he's in my heart a little bit. So it was great to see him at Dragon's first podium of the season. Surprisingly, it was D'Ambrosio, actually. Like I said earlier, under threat for that seat for next season. Lopez, despite not doing the first race, maybe first and second race? Yeah, first and second race Lopez didn't take part in. He's looked really solid all year, actually. He's looked the better out of the 2, so I'm quite surprised D'Ambrosio has managed to get the podium, but in the last 2 races, he's looked the more solid of the pair. So great for D'Ambrosio, great for Dragon, great for the top 3. Mitch Evans, who started on pole, ended up P7. So Jaguar not showing the race pace with Nelson Piquet. Again, no points for Piquet, so disappointing weekend for him. But overall, that is pretty much the roundup of the Zurich E-Prix. One I really enjoyed, and lots of drama, which, you know what, in Formula E we're used to. We're used to be honest with you. Not so much this season. It's been a little bit quieter, but this race, really enjoyed it. I love the circuit layout. I thought it looked fantastic. The pit lane was probably the best pit lane I've ever seen in my life. Along the cobbled street, narrow pit lane, under a bridge with some tree cover. I thought it looked fantastic. I love the Zurich E-Prix, and it's definitely going to be one I consider going to next year. It really is. Really enjoyed the race. Like I say, the venue was fantastic. So for me, the Zurich E-Prix, I'm going to give a 9 out of 10. Really, really fantastic. And there's only one man for driver of the day, and that's Lucas Di Grassi. Fantastic drive from the Brazilian. His first win of the season, And you know what? Just think, if he'd have picked up points in that first half of the season when his car blew up every race, he could easily be in this title fight. He easily could be. He was easily been one of the best drivers this season. Him and Jean-Eric Vergne. You know, Vergne's had a couple of blips here and there, but really Vergne's been Mr. Consistent. First, fifth, pretty much. Bird's been a bit more all over the place weekend to weekend. That's, I think, a little bit more towards the car. We've heard from Lynn and Bird that their car seems to be really good on some tracks and really poor on the next, and I think that's really obvious if you look at their performances. Maybe it's just their pace. They're not particularly good at particular tracks, but I think if two drivers are saying the same things in the same car, then you've got to go with it, and that's always been a trait of the Virgin car. So, really enjoyed this race. I think you guys can work that out. But what does this mean for the championship? Well, we've got 2 races left in the Formula E World Championship, Season 4. Both of them in a couple of weekends' time, so not this weekend, the next weekend, both of them at the same track on the Saturday and the Sunday. So Formula E, if you're not quite too sure, if you're watching this podcast, you probably do know, but if you're listening, I should say, listening to this podcast, you probably do know that Formula E takes place on one day. So pretty much this weekend is going to be an absolute blitz for these guys. I know most drivers love driving, and so they've got no issue with it whatsoever, but I'm sure by that final lap on the second race, on the Sunday, these guys are going to be absolutely knackered. It's pretty good then that Formula 1 won't be on that weekend. Formula 1's done a 3 weekend in a row, and that weekend will be the first race weekend that we won't have Formula 1, but Formula E will be there, so racing galore at the moment. But I imagine for Sam Bird and Jean-Eric Vergne, that's going to be a really tough weekend to get through. I imagine Lucas Di Grassi will perform really well. Like I said, he's hit this really good stride of performances lately, and I imagine he'll continue that. So I think it'll be really interesting to see the fight for the championship, but also the fight for the win. I think we could see some fantastic racing in the USA. New York is where the race is. A race dominated by Sam Bird last year. Can he do it again? Big question marks, but a real spicy end to the Season 4 Formula E season. I'd love to know your thoughts on the Zurich E-Prix. Who do you think is going to win the Formula E Season 4? Comment below. If I was going to put my money on it, I'd say Jean-Eric Vergne. He's been Mr. Consistent all season. All season long, he's been so good. I'm going to produce a video explaining all the drama going into the final season next week, building up that anticipation for the race weekend. But I think now we'll move on to the news. Obviously, the Zurich E-Prix was a couple of weekends ago, so some of you, well, most of you guys will have seen it, will have seen all the extra bits on the YouTube channel. But you're here for the news. That's what you want to see in this podcast. So let's move on to it then. Let's move on to the Season 5 news. I love talking about Season 5. I really do. Really looking forward to Season 5. It's going to be the biggest season in Formula E history. One of the reasons it's going to be the biggest season of all time is the huge amount of big names joining Formula E. Not just drivers, not just teams, but now we have team principals as well. Last week was announced that Venturi, the team that seemed to be coming up with all these incredible announcements at the moment. We've got the new livery, which you can see on screen there, which I think looks really nice. It's one of my favourite Gen 2 cars that I've seen so far. The whitey silver and blue, I think, matches really nicely. But they have announced that Susie Wolff will be their brand new team principal for Season 5. A great appointment. Susie Wolff was a former teammate of Felipe Massa at Williams Formula 1 team. She's the wife of Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team principal in Formula 1. And so I think this will be a really great fit for Venturi, who, let's be honest, they're going to be looking for the title next season. They haven't done it for the past couple of seasons, but next year I think is going to be their first ever real big chance at winning that title, mainly because of Felipe Massa. I think he's going to fit into Formula E straight away, and I think a bit like Jean-Eric Vergne, he's going to be a Mr. Consistent, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. A lot of drivers in Formula E haven't been too consistent, but we've seen that the championship winners, Piquet in the first season, Buemi in the second season, Di Grassi in the third, and most likely Vergne in the fourth, they've been consistent. And their rivals, like this year Sam Bird, have not been consistent. So I think Massa definitely can provide that consistency for Venturi. And it's going to be big question marks with who's alongside Felipe Massa. At the moment, Venturi have Mauro Engel and Eduardo Mortara. Mortara at the beginning of the season looked the best of the two by a country mile, but recently Engel has put in some really good performances and slowly has been getting used to Formula E and finally is becoming a consistent point scorer. So it'll be really interesting to see who Venturi decide to go with. I think they will go with Mortara, I think. And actually, no, I've quickly just changed my mind there. A Mercedes team will be joining next season, so I think Mortara will head over there. And it would make sense that Venturi, well, it would make sense that Engel went as well, but I can see it's more likely that Mortara will jump ship, and I think Engel will remain at Venturi, would be my guess just right now, off the top of my head. But all we have confirmed so far is Susie Wolff is the team principal, and Felipe Massa is arguably the number one driver. Arguably. That's, you know, it's all going to be a bit all over the place, and Massa has been out of racing for a year, so you don't know what that could do, and he is getting on a bit, is Felipe, so it'll be really interesting to see where he fits in with the Formula E pack. I've mentioned a few times, I don't want to ramble on too much, but Formula E now, the next stepping stone, they really need to punch a hole into Formula 1 to try and catch up, is these big names. Felipe Massa was definitely one. I think if they really want to put themselves on the map, they need to be looking at Raikkonen and Alonso. I think those two are the next big names. And even Hamilton, I think those are the three that Formula E really need to try and push now to bring over. I think the most likely out of those three would probably be Raikkonen. I think he's going to be out of Formula 1 at the end of this year. He won't want to leave racing, although he doesn't seem too interested. He does, I think, love it at heart. So I imagine he'll be heading over to Formula E. I'd love to see that. That would be fantastic for Formula E. Like I say, I'd love it as well from a personal standpoint, but I think he'd fit in quite well. I think he wouldn't win it, which would be nice to see. It would give other drivers in Formula E a bit of recognition, because a lot of the time then, you know, not slated as such, but it's known that Formula E drivers are not as good as Formula 1 drivers, which is a fair enough assumption. You know, if they don't make it to Formula 1, Formula E is probably the next best thing. So it's a fair enough assumption, but there's definitely some drivers in Formula E that could give it a good go in Formula 1. So Raikkonen coming down to Formula E, I think, would be a really sensible idea for Formula E and a really sensible idea for Raikkonen as well. But I think the big news here, not the livery, not Massa, but Susie Wolff. I think that's absolutely huge, putting in a woman as a team principal. For gender equality, I think in Formula E, it's been better than Formula 1, for sure. I mean, Formula 1, we've got team principals such as Claire Williams, Manisha Kautenborn. Those two are really big influences in Formula 1. Susie Wolff as well, being a Formula 1 driver herself, is a huge inspiration to so many people across the world, and I think becoming a team principal just furthers that inspiration even more. And I think if they can really push on this season, which I think they can, it'll be even more of an incredible story. So Venturi, it's all looking good. I'm really hoping that they can put a stamp on this championship. I think it's more than doable, so I'll definitely be looking forward to that in Season 5. But that's not the only Season 5 news. It's not the only livery that was announced this weekend. We've also got livery announcements from Mahindra and Nissan. So on screen right now you can see the brand new Mahindra Season 5 livery. It's not too different to the liveries they've ran in the past in Formula E. It's nice, it looks slick, and you know what? I think it makes this brand new Gen 2 car look even better. I love it. I call it the Batmobile. I think it looks like a Batmobile for sure, but it looks fantastic. It's going to be great when it's racing. We've seen Nico Rosberg run it around at the Berlin E-Prix, but I'm really excited now. I cannot wait to see these cars on track. The Nissan livery, that's something a little bit different. I've seen the Nissan livery, but when I'm doing my background research to try and find it for you guys, it's nowhere. So whether I saw just a show car, which I think is the reports is that it was at the Geneva Auto Show, they had it there, but it hasn't really leaked out on the internet anywhere that much. There's been a few photos here and there, but they seem to have been swept up pretty quickly. So very interesting things going on there at Nissan. But it's really interested me how early these teams are really showing off their liveries. Now, I think that's, for me, something that Formula E needs to work on. I usually praise Formula E to the hills and back, but something I think Formula E need to work on a little bit is their finesse. Now, Formula One is known that you keep, generally, as a rule, you keep your drivers all the way through the season. You do your liveries at the beginning of the season, and that's it. Formula E is a bit different. Drivers swap and change most races. You have at least 1 or 2 drivers changing here or there. The last couple of weekends we've been alright, but even then, we've had Tom Dillman come in at Berlin, so never quite 100% consistent. And I think showing off the liveries now is far too early. I know they really want to hype up Season 5, but we've still got a huge, absolute monstrosity of a season finale coming up next, or the 2 weekends from now, in New York. I think that should really be the focus for Formula E. So these little Season 5 announcements, although they're fantastic and I'm really looking forward to Season 5, I hope that doesn't take away from the season finale. So let's just quickly do the final bit about Season 5 news, and then we can just, pretty much for the rest of the episode, I've realised the England match is on, so I might cut this a little bit short, I do apologise. But we want to talk about this season ender. We really do. It's going to be huge. It's going to be the big talking point for the next 2 weeks in Formula E. So let's talk about the final bit of news in the world of Formula E, and that is the announcement for the Season 5 calendar. Every single race has been announced now except one, which I'm going to talk about my speculation of what I think that race could be. But let's just go through this calendar as it stands at this current point. So, as you'd imagine, the calendar looks very similar to this year, starting off at a brand new location, but that mid-season is where it looks extremely similar to this year, and obviously rounding out the season with Zurich E-Prix, which I, like I said at the beginning of this episode, really enjoyed, so I'm really happy that one's back in it. And we've got the New York doubleheader in July once again, the exact same date as this year, the 13th and 14th of July. Very excited indeed. But let's go through the other changes. So, this year we started off the season in China, where you can see it's changed. This year, round 5 and round 6 are both in China. The second Chinese one there does say to be announced, but today it was announced and it's taking place at Sanya. Now, Sanya, I'd never heard of before, but they call it, supposedly, I did a bit of background research for you guys, they call it the Chinese Hawaii, and I'm telling you, this place looks absolutely incredible. And you know what? It made me intrigued thinking about going there because it looked amazing. A race there looks incredible, so that one I'm really looking forward to. But going through it in order then, the first race of the season, Saudi Arabia. Obviously, it was announced a couple of weeks ago that Saudi Arabia would finally have a Formula E race, another race in the Middle East. The first time, like I say, in Saudi Arabia, but that will be taking place on the 15th of December 2018. So that's the only race of Season 5 taking place this year. I'm not a huge fan of the format, calling it Season 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. I don't really like that. I know they're trying to be a bit different, but I think it's a bit awkward. And I'd rather it be the 2018 season, 2019 season, which very well could happen with this calendar. After this, they could very easily, then for the following year, decide just to have it the 2020 season. So I think they should do that personally. But for now, it's just called Season 5. The next race, Marrakesh, run by Felix Rosenqvist this season. Didn't enjoy it that much, but it's back. Don't really need to complain too much. It was an alright race, but wouldn't have really minded if it was out of the season. Then we've got the to-be-announced race. I'm going to talk about what I think that will be in a moment. Then we've got Mexico City, a great race from this year, so I'm really excited for that one to be back on the calendar. The last 2 years it's provided some really great racing, so like I say, we'll look forward to that one indeed. Then we've got the Hong Kong E-Prix, pretty self-explanatory, we've had it this year. A really impressive race at the beginning of the season, so it's moved a bit further down the calendar, but nevertheless, I did enjoy that race indeed. Then we've got the Sayana race that I mentioned there. Looking forward to that one, probably the most out of all the races on the calendar, bar one. Then we have the Rome E-Prix, which I was disappointed with this season, to be honest with you. I really was. It didn't blow me away quite like I thought it would. The track was pretty bland, and they probably, I think, should explore changing that for next season, but they'll probably keep it very similar. Then we have the Paris E-Prix. Really enjoyed that one this year. I thought that one looked fantastic, so that'll be amazing. Then, round 9, we've got the giant Monaco. Monaco is back. on the Formula E calendar, and I've heard rumours that's been going around in the world of Formula E that they're going to be using the full Monaco Grand Prix circuit. So if you didn't know, previously in Formula E they've sort of used this half circuit of Monaco. It's a bit weird. They sort of cut out the second sector, Casino Square, Le Source hairpin. They sort of get rid of all of that, and all it does is through turn 1 it goes straight down pretty much to the swimming pool area. It's very weird, not a huge fan of it, but rumours are that will be the full Monaco Grand Prix circuit, which I would love. I think the Monaco E-Prix for sure causes some carnage, so I'm really looking forward to seeing that one back on the calendar with bigger cars, the Batmobiles. That's going to be a really enjoyable weekend for sure. Then we've got the Berlin E-Prix. Wasn't a huge fan of that one. We got some pretty good racing, but again, a pretty bland track. Then we have Zurich, which, like I've mentioned a million times, I love that race. Great racing itself, great driving, but also just the city itself, the surrounding was really special. New York, again, rounding out the season, just like this season. We haven't seen it yet this season, so I can't really comment too much, but last season it was a pretty solid race with Sam Bird destroying the field, so definitely not going to lie, a really nice looking calendar. We're missing a few races. We're missing Punta del Este, the Uruguayan race. A race which was alright, but I won't miss it too much. That could be the one to be announced, but my money is on the British race. Though, if you look at the calendar, they've really tried to sort it into sort of an Asian season, an African season, a European season. They've been going on about this British race for so long now, and it seems to be that this is in Birmingham. The Birmingham E-Prix seems to almost be done every single season, but not quite. And I'm praying that in that January slot we have a British E-Prix. I think that needs to be back on the calendar. We've mentioned it a few times that they've gone for the big 5 races. Italy, France, USA, Monaco, Germany. That's what they've been going for. But I think arguably interchangeable with any of them would be a British one. They had the London E-Prix, which many drivers didn't actually like that much. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. So I think, for me personally, of course I'd love a British Formula E race. I've never been to a Formula E race, and the most likely race I would go to is a British race. Of course, if they had the British race, I'd go to that. So obviously, fingers crossed, but in that January slot, it does seem unlikely. So I would imagine a Uruguay would probably be the most likely track to fit into there. I think the South American race, there's not actually one currently on the calendar. Just quickly looking at it, I didn't really notice that. There's not a South American race, so I'd be very surprised if they didn't go to Uruguay, Argentina, maybe look at Brazil, trying to host a race there, something like that. They're known for being a global country, really pushing forward the globalisation with this whole championship. So if they didn't have a race in South America, I'd be very surprised. Every other continent pretty much is represented there. We've still never had a race either in Australasia. I mean, Formula E has been to the Antarctic. They've done that. They've done a video on that with Lucas de Grassi, but they've still never been to Australasia. You know, Australia itself, New Zealand. I mean, I don't know if they've considered it, but for whatever reason, they've never done it. And considering Albert Park, where they do the Formula 1 race, is a street circuit, pretty strange. So I imagine that one could slot in there as well, but I think it's more likely to be Punta del Este. I think that would be what I put my money on. Would be a bit of a shame that it's a very similar season to this year, but I think the introduction of Sayana, really looking forward to that one, and the return of Monaco, yeah, 100% buzzing for that one. So that was pretty much all of the Formula E news this week. Obviously, like I said, the England game, so I can't lie to you, that is on in the minute, so I want to watch that. But some smaller news. It was announced that James Rossiter would be the Techeetah test driver. I don't really know too much about him, so I can't really give you too much of an analysis there. NIO have decided to reveal their Gen 2 car at Goodwood Festival of Speed, so their livery will be announced there, which I think a really, really great place to do that. And that's pretty much it in the world of Formula E for this week. But to round off this week's show, I wanted to quickly talk about the monstrous battle we have. Obviously next weekend, or next week, when I do the Formula E show, will be the big talking point and build-up for that finale of Season 4. Right now, like I said earlier, I think my money's got to be on Jean-Eric Vergne. You know, he doesn't quite have the momentum going into this race, but he's been Mr. Consistent all season. Last weekend was a huge blip and so many things went against him. But I think under the pressure, I'd put money on Jev to perform. As much as I'd love Sam Bird, the British driver, the British hope in Formula E, I don't think he's quite got it. Sam Bird and the DS Virgin car have been very inconsistent, and I just have that funny feeling with the team principal leaving just last month in June, that's going to throw everything up in the air. So they need to find a replacement pretty quick, because that's going to be an absolute shambles. What an awful time for him to leave. I can't quite remember his name off the top of my head. I'll quickly just try and find it for you. But that is huge, you know, so that could really shape the title fight. But I think, to be honest with you, qualifying, that's going to be huge. If either of those two can get pole and get the extra points, if either of those two can get that fastest lap and get the extra points, that's going to be huge as well. So everything is to play for next week. I keep saying next weekend, you know what I mean? In 2 weekends' time. But I think my money would be on Jean-Eric Vergne, and I think you need to be looking out for Lucas di Grassi. As I mentioned earlier, Lucas has been on the best form in the whole entire championship by a country mile. Lucas di Grassi has been dominating recently. He should win this championship, to be honest with you. If that car wasn't such a dog at the beginning of the season, if that car didn't break down every 5 seconds, every race, he could easily be at the front by a mile. I think, you know, early on in the season, and I'm going to do a season review at the end of the season, but I think early on in the season, Daniel Abt really impressed. But I think actually it was more that the Abt car, the Abt Audi Sport car, is just the best on the grid by a mile. I really believe that. I think that car should have won the Drivers' Championship. You see now, they're at the top of the Constructors' Championship, and they've only had one car in the race half the time all season. So, for sure, Audi, this will be one that got away. And Lucas di Grassi, that was a real opportunity this year to become, you know, the first 2-time Formula E World Champion. But nevertheless, we go into the final race of the season with it all to play for. Once again, every race or every season in Formula E has ended at the final race, and no one has ever won the World Championship twice, and this year will continue that trend. Guys, thank you so much for watching the Formula E show as always. Like I say, England, I've got to end it early, I do apologise. Thursday will be the launch of the Formula 1 show, the first ever time I'll be doing that, so look out for that one. We're going to be building up to the Silverstone Grand Prix, doing a little bit of review again of the Austrian Grand Prix, all the news in Formula 1, all the transfers, so look forward to that if you may. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.